So I am really excited to introduce our first keynote speaker of the day. Larissa has been a longtime friend who I've seen from a distance, but it's really been an honor to witness and participate in her work just in the last couple of months as she has put together this experience for you all, and I've watched and supported a little bit from the side. So Larissa is a systems coach, a ceremony designer, and a rite of passage guide. She specializes in facilitating transformation and alignment across all scales of organizations to create service, to create organizations that provide service to help humans provide that for each other. With a deep expertise in the mechanics of transformation, Larissa helps individuals and groups develop refined sensing and listening, shed what no longer serves us, and dynamically steward greater creative energy in their lives and companies. As change agents at Responsive Conference, within or without organizations, we are those people responsible for others' transformation. So on stage this year, Larissa is going to be inviting each of us to consider our own blind spots, our own taboos, the places that maybe we're failing to address or not looking at as deeply, those shadows that we're hiding from just a little, in a way to support and encourage us to do our own best work. So it's my pleasure to welcome on stage Larissa Conte. Standing.
Good morning. Oh, yes. I already like this engagement level. This is great. So, it is my honor to be here with you. It is my honor to be a part of this community where we're considering what's possible for work, what's possible for our creative collaborations with each other. And I'd like to start with some sensing, because so much of my work that I do with individuals and teams and organizations relies on building the muscle of our sensing. So if you will, please go ahead and put down your things for now and close your eyes. And as you connect to your breath and your inner being, I invite you to connect to the part of yourself that holds your deepest intelligence. And to ask, what is it that you sense at work, but you have avoided expressing? You may have some light awarenesses come up, but I ask you to dive into the deepest, most vulnerable one. And in connecting to that piece, notice how it makes you feel in your body, in your being, in your physical self, in your emotional self, and in your energetic self. And to breathe into that feeling and realize that you can be with it. And as you continue to hold that awareness, I now invite you to expand your sensing to the wider room and to notice both what you feel like and what this room of colleagues and community feels like as we sense the things we avoid expressing. Now I invite you to take a big breath in and a big breath out. And to open your eyes and to turn to someone ideally who you don't know. And you're going to take turns sharing two things. First, in under 5 words, how does that truth that's unexpressed make you feel? And second, if you feel comfortable, to say in one line, what is the thing that you haven't said, so that we can have a space to practice saying these things. So first person, please go ahead. I'll give you about 30 seconds, and then I'll give you a notice to come back. go ahead and switch partners, please, and then we'll come back together. Thank you so much. So that first layer is our sensing of ourselves as individuals. And now I'm going to invite you to please raise your hand if the thing that you've avoided expressing, you've held because of power dynamics, ego dynamics, or a fear of losing your job. Please raise your hand and keep your hands raised. Put them up high. We are going to be going to some uncomfortable stuff. Go ahead and look around. See how many people's hands are raised. I think we're at a solid 80 to 90. Thank you so much. And then please raise your hand if you've not expressed this thing for some other reason. Lovely. Okay, yeah, so we're at like 75-ish% on that. For those of you who haven't expressed it due to something that's not power, ego, or fear of losing your job, I'd love to talk to you after to see what that thing is. Because I bring this to you today with a hypothesis and an observation based on my experience in this community. That in my noticing, we tend to avoid speaking about power, directly about power. We can go to the side, or we can have things that touch it, but we don't bring it right to the table. So we need to lay some ground rules. What's power? In my understanding, power is the amount of energy an individual can access and direct through their being and their surrounding systems, and that there are two primary ways that we access energy. The first being inner cultivation. This is our human birthright that we all have access to, regardless of circumstance or place on the planet. The second is social agreements and systems. The rules that exist in culture at any scale, national, organizational, familial, that govern how much energy we can interact with. So these things that we avoid are very interesting. And what would be possible for all of us? For those of us who come together because our purpose is to steward the passing of command and control systems into more self-organizing, self-managing, adaptive systems. What would be possible if we had a different relationship with power? So today, this is an invitation for you to grow, for all of us to grow, to keep growing in this area, and to look at the amount of potential that exists in this space if we step into it ever more with our eyes open and our sensing present. So I'm a tracker by trade. I track humans, I track animals, and health, and landscapes, and systems, and patterns. Wayfinding, which is not only the name of my business, but it's also the core skill that I teach people, is inner and outer listening that guides our ability to continuously navigate, integrate our alignment and aliveness. And those things that we avoid are perfect for wayfinding because they indicate the opportunities for our growth. It is the things we fear most deeply and the things we long for most intensely that are the signposts to our becoming. They ask that we walk towards them. So today, it's a little more comfortable when we walk there together, rather than we feel like we're walking there alone. And when we encounter these most challenging territories that feel like they can take us to the underworld of our being, it can require a container of safety. So I invite us to consider a collective rite of passage today. I define rites of passage as symbolic experiences that mark a threshold in one's life or growth. And something must be released or die for the individual to experience greater inner power, that first type of power. It's like the snake whose skin gets too tight because it's getting big and it needs to be pushed off. I host Rites of Passage for individuals when they've co-founded a company and realize that chapter of their life has come to an end and they need to walk on. With founding teams who realize that the love and inspiration that was once there has come into a calcified and static place and they don't know why and it feels like an impasse. In urban and wilderness settings, in so many places, and the magic of a rite of passage is not the outer form. We have 3 big thresholds in human life that are often pointed to: birth, marriage, and death. But it is not these outer experiences only that touch us. The magic lies with the inner change that's possible. Because when we change ourselves vibrationally and on the belief level, then our outer life tends to come into alignment with that sense of self. And the time is ripe for this. We happen to be at an amazing moment in human history and in the United States, in our personal culture. Because our cultural conversation about power and dignity is rapidly changing. We all know that the ship is shaking. And as Gary taught us yesterday, shaking, that rattle, that dissonance, it's an indicator that we're not in our flow state. Something's got to change. The needles are wavering, and the glass is rattling, and it might even have a couple cracks. We're experiencing a rise in displays of flaunting power abuse. We're also experiencing a rise in incredibly inspiring displays of inner power and taking a stand for our different identity vectors, our different aspects of being across all spectrums. And we, in the responsive community, have a profound seat of opportunity to influence the conversation around power. We have the opportunity to consciously hospice aspects of inhabiting power in organizations and groups of human that have been based in control and fear, and to have spaciousness and love and compassion as we create patterns based on everyone's inner power flourishing. But, why haven't we been doing this in much greater effect? Humans always have very good reasons for these things. So let's dive into some of those reasons. Because it's only by understanding where we are in the big sense, where we're oriented, that we can know where we're going. And also understanding what's keeping us where we are so that we can look at it directly and choose if we want to keep it or if we want to put it down. So I'd like to highlight 3 limiting beliefs that I've heard in the narrative of our shared culture through the past couple years. So 1, I've heard, this isn't part of our work. This is not what responsive is about. Like, thank you for your enthusiasm. No. But how many of us have put forward a proposal, an invitation, a plan, an initiative that only when it is reviewed by someone who has organizational or institutional power that they realize some aspect of it triggers their ego and their standing in the system, and then all of a sudden that plan is not happening, we're not proceeding with it, we don't have the budget, thank you so much for your effort, and a very rational business reason is put forward, but it's based on protecting the inner being. So basically, limiting beliefs have falsehoods. So that's clearly not true. It's part of our work. And that belief also points to this interesting divide that can exist in this community that Adam spoke to yesterday. This belief that there are those of us who come into responsive and focus on relationships and heart, and that's what responsive is. And there are those of us who come to responsive and believe that structure and tactics and changing the systems is what responsive is. And it's both. We need to change both. If we don't have the vibrational evolution and the change in our beliefs and our relationships, then we can't be in integrity with these new structures. And if we don't have the structures to hold us, then we can't maintain that inner alignment. So I actually think that that belief is covering some inner part that's a deeper fear, that I'll lose my job if I bring it up. And this fear is valid in many ways. A 2016 Federal Commission on the Study of Workplace Harassment, where they defined harassment as not only what we understand as sexual identity harassment, but belittling or something that gets in the way of you being able to do your job. In that study, they found that 75% of people who experienced harassment didn't report it. And that 75% of those who did experienced retaliation at work. That's a huge number. These are incredible indicators about our culture's ability to engage power, or inability, if you will. But I also think we create a greater projection than necessary onto each other, that we can overinflate and create specters that enable us to stay small and keep this uncomfortable noticing in our being. And we get the payoff of not having to step into the courage and the vulnerability that's required to voice it. So what I think is really going on, oftentimes, is I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this, and I think I'll just make it worse. And I don't think it can be generative. And I don't feel like there's anywhere I can move because I feel like I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. That is also a fear posture. And when we create from fear, that song, that silent song plays through our creations. So when we feel like we're trapped, I'm going to give you a trap door today. In addition to ecosystem science and strategy and interpersonal relations, I've also studied alchemy across different disciplines of the world. And I don't mean changing metals. I mean changing and refining the inner substance of our being. And the magic that exists here is in the inner shift. So this symbol, the Ouroboros, one of my teachers, I want you to physically try to empathize with what's happening for this snake. Imagine being a snake biting your own butt. What's going on? How comfortable is that? Where are you going? Nowhere. You can't move. You're trapped. She said it's the equivalent of a skull and crossbones symbol. It's a closed system. And so when we have the perception in this binary way of I'm damned if I do this and I'm damned if I don't do it, this binary construct, that's a very good indicator that we need to call on our creative sovereignty as humans and find the third way. There are never just two ways. Come on. But sometimes when we're so used to them, it's impossible to see. So I'm going to call up our shared friend, Robin Zander, to help me expound upon some energetic frameworks that I use in Wayfinding to show how we can shift this song and this dance. So thank you, Robin. Okay, the first one is to understand a little bit more about how we deal with being uncomfortable. Not even conflict, but something that pushes upon our established stand. So Robin, I'm going to put up my arms. I'm going to ask you to give me a nice little shove. Okay. And I'm going to demonstrate one of the first energetic patterns that I see in humans. And we're acting this out because energetic interactions are happening between us all the time. This literally is the silent song of relationship. But it's so subtle that we can miss it. So I'm going to make it pretty gross to be obvious about it. Okay, ready? Shove me. Okay. So that first form I call caving and collapsing. You may empathize with this or know someone who hates conflict and just wants to run away and hide. Okay, we're going to do a second. This is the pendulum form on the other side of the spectrum. So shove me. And thank you. So you may also know that form or someone who inhabits that form who's like, conflict, bring it. That one I call dominating and expansive. And even though they look very different and they feel very different, they have the similarity of not engaging in relationship. So what's a third way? One more push, if you would. Give it to me, Robin. So this one, I call strong and clear. I'm connected to my stand. And I'm not against Robin. I'm in relationship with him. Thank you so much. I get worked up doing it. But part of this shift that I'm inviting in all of us is how can we deconstruct the idea that there's even a fight happening? I'm not fighting you. So the second energetic framework I'll show you is called relational Aikido. And I chose the word Aikido because Aikido is a Japanese martial art that was developed in the 1920s and 30s that was designed with the intention of preventing the attacker from experiencing harm. It's also known as the way of the harmonious spirit. So Robin, if you can come stand, there's great. So I'd like you to slow-mo throw a punch at my face. So basically, thank you so much. That's energetically what I'm asking us to step into and to consider, how do I do that with my words? How do I do that with my being? What is required for me to have the inner posture that when someone attacks me, I bring it back into a neutral space and I say, we can stand together and we can look in the same direction. So where does this adversarial stance originate from us? It's scary. We don't like it. And because we're vibrational beings, we just ping back and forth on each other. So we have to figure out how can we have our own vibrational sovereignty. So now we're going to do a third one. I don't have a very eloquent name for this other than the love and fear dance. So I'm going to use a favorite prop of this community, Sharpies. We use them all the time. Robin, here's your Sharpie. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I am going to initiate gestures, and I want you to respond in the ways that are authentic to your being based on what I'm doing.
Okay.
Claro?
Yep.
Okay, great. So when we're little kids, this is usually what we do. And I invite you to notice how you feel in your bodies watching this. And then something can happen in our lives, like the following moment. Robin, I'm going to invite you to knock my Sharpie on the ground. Where'd it go? All the way off the stage. I felt you squeeze. I squeeze. When Robin and I first practiced this, he was like, oh, do I have to? He was like, this is disgusting. I don't want to do that. And I was like, Robin, it's not my heart. It's just a Sharpie. And I say that to everyone who I do this with. But we all have that response. It's amazing. So then after that happens, here's what the dance can look like. At best, it's protective. And at worst, we start to cut each other. And when I cut you, Robin, what do you want to do? Yeah. You didn't sell enough this month.
You messed up in that meeting.
Yeah, and so we're going to wash that off. This doesn't feel good. So instead, what we need to evolve into realizing is I'm not giving away my power. I can come to Robin and I can encounter anyone in a relationship because I can't depend on what Robin will do with his energy, but I know that I can set the tone with my posture. So one more time, we're going to come and do a dance. Thank you. And you can hold your Sharpie. I'm going to keep mine here so I can be clear in my boundaries, but I can be welcoming. And even if he's protective, I can persist. And if he goes to cut me, will you go to cut me? Yeah, I can have boundaries, but I can do it lovingly, and we can put these two paradoxical things together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I convey these things as seeds for you, because finding the words and doing the dance is a journey that we each have to find on our own. And I go into much deeper training with people, but I want to paint the possibility for you in an energetic sense. I forgot I still have that on. So I want to ask you, you who influence so many systems, how can you evolve as a truth teller to raise power awareness in the systems that you touch? What are the steps of grace and personal challenge, whether it's knowing your boundaries, breathing more, or being more loving, that you can take? So I'm going to give you another minute to turn to your partner and come up with a commitment of something that you can do. It doesn't have to be related to that unspoken truth, or it might be. But what do you want to commit to shifting in your inner posture and your outer being in answer to this question? So please go ahead, and I'll prompt you to switch. Go ahead and switch. Please thank your partner. And thank you all for your willingness to listen, your willingness to consider, your willingness to feel and open up, and for the work that you already do and all the amazing ways that you're already shifting systems. My heart is full of thank you for you. And though this is not a deep or full, spacious initiation, that word, to initiate, I am excited for what each of you is going to initiate from here, one who acts, one who brings into being. Because we each have so much more power than we claim. And we're often terrified of it. But this dance, this practice, is beautiful and fun and powerful. So I'm excited for all of the ripples that you'll create going out from here. Thank you for your time.